Ileocecal valve. Separates small and large intestine. Nissl body. Nissl body on rough ER and have lots of free ribosomes. Microlia. Microlia, glial cells derived from mesoderm that function as macrophages in the central nervous system. Cotyledon. Cotyledon, part of a seed embryo that becomes the first leaves of the seedling. Semilunar valve. At the bases of the aorta and the pulmonary artery, 3 cusps to prevent blood flow back into the heart. Pyloric stenosis valve. Pyloric stenosis valve in between stomach and duodenum, first part of the small intestine. Longest mitotic stage. The longest mitotic stage is prophase. The shortest mitotic stage is anaphase. Parenchyma cells. Parenchyma cells make up soft tissues like leaves and fruit, alive in maturity. Sclerenchyma. Sclerenchyma, dead in maturity, make up hard, woody structures. Determinate versus indeterminate cleavage. Determinate cleavage, incomplete embryos characteristic of protostomes. Zygote dies. Determinate cleavage, twins. Cambium tissue. Cambium tissue, cellular plant tissue from which phloem, xylem, and cork grows. Allopatric speciation. Allopatric, when 2 groups of species are isolated. Speciation occurs because of a lack of genetic interchange. Adipose, tissue used to store fat. Nerve organs are made from these 4 tissues. Organs are made from nervous, epithelium, muscle, and connective tissues. Aquaporin. Aquaporin, proteins in a cellular membrane that regulate the flow of water. Creatine phosphate. Creatine phosphate, rapidly available reserve of high-energy phosphates in skeletal muscle. Myoglobin. Myoglobin, similar to hemoglobin, but is a monomer, stores O2 in muscles. Transposable elements. Transposable elements, portions of DNA that can remove and move themselves in a chromosome. Vegetative propagation. Vegetative propagation, one plant fertilizes itself. Hypotonic. Cells swell and sometimes burst. Hypertonic. Cells shrivel. Humoral immunity. Antibodies. Peritoneum. Peritoneum, serous membrane lining the abdominal cavity and organs. Peritoneum, let's do that one more time. Peritoneum, serous membrane lining the abdominal cavity and organs. The pinna. Pinna, external ear of humans and mammals. Arteriole. Arteriole, a small branch of an artery leading into capillaries. Sarcomere, basic unit of striated muscle tissue. Esophageal, cardiac, or gastroesophageal sphincter. Esophageal, cardiac, or gastroesophageal sphincter. Esophageal sphincter, the sphincter between esophagus and stomach. R plasmid. R plasmid, genes that confer resistance to antibiotics or other bacterial growth inhibitors. Meninges. The three membranes, dura mater, arachnoid, and pia mater, that line the skull and vertebral canal and enclose the brain and spinal cord. Cardiac output is explained by the equation cardiac output is equal to the stroke volume times the heart rate. Functional unit of nervous system. Nerve. Epiglottis. Epiglottis, a flap of cartilage epiglottis, a flap of cartilage at the root of the tongue, which is depressed during swallowing to cover the opening of the windpipe. Age of the Earth, 4.5 billion years. Eukaryotes appeared how many years ago? 0.5 billion years ago. Prokaryotes appeared how many years ago? 3.5 billion years ago. The pleura. Pleura, a pair of serous membrane lining the thorax and enveloping the lungs. Serous membrane. Serous membrane, a mesothelial tissue lining certain internal cavities of the body. Alveoli. Alveoli, small pit or cavity, tiny air sacs in the lungs where air exchange occurs. Path of urine in leaving the body. It leaves first through the kidney to the ureters, urinary bladder, urethra, then you would pee on a tree. Renal artery. Renal artery supplies kidneys with blood. Diabetes insipidus. Diabetes insipidus, not enough ADH, you lose large amounts of water. Okay, diabetes insipidus, you don't have enough ADH and you lose large amounts of water. Diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus, sugar in the urine. Visual purple. Visual purple, rhodopsin, primary pigment found in rod photoreceptors. Visual purple, rhodopsin, primary pigment found in rod photoreceptors. Peristalsis. Peristalsis, wave-like muscle contractions that move food to different processing stations in the digestive tract. Alimentary canal. Alimentary canal, the whole passage along which food passes through the body, from mouth to anus. Gout. Gout, defective metabolism of uric acid, causing arthritis, especially in smaller bones of feet, deposits of crystals in tissues, X-linked. PKU disease. PKU disease, inability to break down phenylalanine. High levels of phenylalanine cause brain damage. It's an autorecessive disease. Tay-Sachs disease. Tay-Sachs disease, caused by lysosomal defect. Certain cell membrane components, lipids, accumulate in brain and cause spasticity and death in childhood. Autorecessive disease. Denitrifying bacteria. Denitrifying bacteria, bacteria that uses NO3 negative and NO2 negative when O2 starved and produces N2 as a product. That would be, it has nitrate and nitrite, and it'll use that if it's O2 starved to produce and produces N2 as a product. Okay. Takes what kind of blood where? Pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery, deoxygenated blood to lungs. Pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein, oxygenated blood from lungs to the heart. Aorta. Aorta, oxygenated blood to the body. Inferior superior vena cava. Superior and inferior vena cava, deoxygenated blood from body to heart. Hashimoto's disease. Hashimoto's, an autoimmune disease causing chronic inflammation and consequential failure of the thyroid gland, polygenetic complex inheritance. Sarcoplasmic reticulum. Sarcoplasmic reticulum, specialized ER of cardiac muscle and skeletal muscle that functions as a storage and release area for calcium. Trophoblast, the next one. Trophoblast, a double layer of cells supplying the embryo with nourishment and later forming the major part of the placenta. Ductus venosus. Ductus venosus allows blood to bypass the liver and in a fetus. Ductus venosus allows blood to bypass the liver in a fetus. Foramen ovale. Foramen ovale allows blood to bypass a pulmonary circulation in a fetus. Autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system consists of sympathetic and parasympathetic systems not consciously controlled. Sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system responds to stress, increased heart rates, blood pressure, pupil dilation, and etc. Fight or flight. Looks like it says here you can't read it, but it says norepinephrine is the main neurotransmitter in the sympathetic nervous system. Okay. Distal convoluted tubule. Distal convoluted tubule. Distal convoluted tubule between loop of Henle and collecting duct system. It also says secretion of K plus and H plus by active transport and NH3 by diffusion occurs here. H plus secretion regulate blood pH. The H plus secretion regulate blood pH. Okay. Glomerulus. Glomerulus, involved with blood filtration. Palindrome. Palindrome, a restriction site read the same forward as it is backward, where restriction enzymes cut DNA. All right, we're going to take a break.